Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the 7-Minute Takeover, where we chat all things acquisitions. We're your hosts. I'm Liz Prey.
I'm Eamonn Gamble.
Today, we're covering a segment on an acquisition accelerator. What makes a good seller?
We spend a lot of time talking about what makes a good deal, what makes a good broker, what makes a good buyer. This is the first time I think we're actually talking about what makes for a good seller. And, I think for a lot of buyers, they kind of forget about this piece of the puzzle too.
Absolutely. So a good seller, someone who's in that readiness state of exiting their business, will have some very specific key characteristics about them that sometimes like when we say them and we start to explain them, it's going to be quite logical. But until you actually consider these as part of the process, sometimes it's not always a top of mind. So
yeah, and the other thing, just before we get into those things, is these are things that it's tough to just come out and ask the seller on. They're all going to be kind of inherent to the seller themselves or to the way that they're running the process, and so you may have to find ways to kind of dig to see if these things are the case, but without.
So we're going to cover some of the behavior things and some of the traits to look out for. So there are 4 that we're going to cover today, 4 characteristics that make for a good seller. And so number 1 is a committed seller. So Eamonn, what exactly do we mean by a committed seller?
A committed seller is somebody who has made the decision to exit their business. They've thought about life after business. They've got a good answer to the question, hey, what are you going to do once you sell the company? They already know what it looks like. They've probably been getting ready for this mentally, at least for at least a couple of years now.
Yeah, they're not just testing the market. So there are business owners who go to market and think, well, let's just see what the market will bear, what offers are coming in at. And if we don't get what we want in the ballpark, then we'll just keep the business. So those necessarily aren't your ready to sell owners. And so that committed component is really important. Coming from the exit planning world where I come from, there are studies that show that 75% of business owners will regret the sale of their business a year after they sell. And one of the key characteristics or one of the key lessons that exit planners preach is really know what you want to do after the sale of your business so you don't look back and have that regret. It's one of the training principles in exit planning. So it is something that you can casually ask about, dig into, what do you plan to do when you sell the business? And
why are you selling the business?
Why are you selling? Those subtle questions about what does life after business look like? And also when they've hired a professional broker or an M&A firm to sell their business, usually that engagement comes with a meaningful engagement fee. And so that fee up front when they've engaged that professional is another indication that they're committed to the process.
Yeah, if you found the business through proprietary means, much higher likelihood that they may just not be ready.
Yeah, they may walk through to a degree and waffle, and so just watch for those cues. The next one is preparedness, that they're actually prepared for the sale of their business. And so what do we mean by that preparedness, Eamonn?
Preparedness is usually the nuts and bolts, a little bit of the dotting of I's and crossing of T's. It's that they've got things like their interim financial statements, their historical financial statements, their customer list, their supplier list, their org chart, their employee, all the things that you're going to ask for, no matter what type of business it is. Maybe the split between service and sales type revenue, like all those fundamental parts of the business, they're going to be able to, upon request, share a document with you that's going to answer not only your questions, but the questions of potential co-investors and the questions of lenders as well. So again, this kind of goes a little bit part and parcel with the committed part of it. It may be a sign that they're actually not really committed to the sale if when you ask for these very simple documents, it takes them a few weeks to turn them around because they just hadn't bothered to prepare them yet.
Yep. So it's everything that you're going to need in due diligence. If they don't have that prepared, it can be an indication that they're just not ready to sell. They haven't done their homework. They maybe haven't hired the right professional advisors to work with them. They should have almost everything that you need to ask for in due diligence ready and able to provide it for you in an organized fashion.
Yeah, maybe you'll find that diamond in the rough that they don't keep track of their business very well, but it's still very solid. But you're taking a pretty big leap of faith on that bet right there.
Yeah, and it's not to say that there might not be a good business hiding behind unpreparedness. It just means you're going to have to stay the course and be a little bit more prudent in your and patient in your approach with them.
Absolutely.
So number 3 is collaboration. It's a very meaningful component of the process. And when they're collaborative, they're working together with you in getting all of the answers to your question. They're being open and transparent about the questions that you're asking. They're working aligned with you to reach a common goal. And so you'll see it in their willingness to meet with you, their availability to answer your questions, their collaboration in negotiations and deal structuring, and planning for that transition period as well. They want to see you, they genuinely want to see you succeed in the acquisition.
Yeah, less of a combative relationship, more of a shared goal, like you said.
Yeah.
Again, this one's a little bit difficult to ask a question specifically about, but it'll come through very quickly, especially once you're under offer and maybe past the broker and interfacing directly with the seller. Although even just how the broker responds to questions may be indicative of how much the seller's allowing them to share from the background. So if you're getting your questions answered, if little issues don't become mountains or they're not nickel and diming on every little term, and you as a buyer should try to avoid that as well, that probably is indicative of a collaborative seller.
Yeah. And be conscientious too that sometimes if there's a lack of collaboration, be empathetic at times as well. It comes back to that, that committed piece of why are they selling? And in some situations, they're selling because of a situation that is outside of their control. And it's very uneasy and uncomfortable or displeasurable for them to be going through this experience. So as much as collaboration is one of those key indicator pieces, again, if it comes back to the why and they're not selling because things are on their own terms, it may be a divorce or a disability, or it could be health issues. That they're having to be forced to sell for one reason or another. And so in some of those situations, you can see a bit of a friction points in collaboration, but lead with empathy in those situations as well.
And the last characteristic is a seller that's willing to retain a little bit of skin in the game. Now, I say this knowing that it's not always going to be the situation. So in all of these things that we've said, hopefully you get somebody who's committed, prepared, collaborative, and is willing to put some skin in the game. But if you get 3 out of 4, you're not doing too bad. So when we talk about skin in the game, Liz, how does a seller leave skin in the game?
So they've got that openness to do some contingent or deferred compensation. So they're willing to do seller financing or an earnout. They're willing to, or even open and excited at times to roll equity and keep a position in the company. They really believe in the company that they've built. They believe in you and the buyer. They believe in the deal terms, and so they're leaving some of their equity on the table for a later period of time.
And it could also take the form of just a really, we'll call it robust transition period. It doesn't have to be necessarily financial, but that they're willing to stick around. The seller that wants to leave 2 weeks after the transaction closes is going to likely have a different point of view from you as the buyer in terms of how successful they want the company to be post-transaction. Whereas if they're sticking around for a year, that there's probably a lower likelihood of there being skeletons in the closet because you're going to find it within a year.
Yeah, especially if they have deferred compensation on the line and they want to see the company be successful and the amount that they've deferred is meaningful, and they really are committed to the process, committed to you, committed to the business, and seeing the full process through. So,
sounds like a dream.
Yep. Ideally, that's what you're looking for. Again, if you don't check all the boxes, not the end of the world, but hopefully those gave you a few trigger points to keep in mind and watch for.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out our website at villagewellth.com.